Hey guys, tonight we travel back to a time when empires weren't held together by fiber optic cables or encrypted apps, but by tired horses, mud-caked boots, and the iron determination of men and women you've never heard of. You're not a prince, not a poet, not even a merchant. You're a postal courier in Tang Dynasty China, and your job is less about glory and more about surviving your shift. You're up before dawn, your breath already visible, your fingers stiff with cold as you tighten the straps on a horse that barely tolerates you. This is not some dainty prance through cherry blossoms. Your path stretches through deserts, mountains, and river crossings that eat men alive. You don't get paid in silver, not enough to brag about, and your accommodations range from damp stables to benches next to goats. But without you, news doesn't reach the frontier, taxes go uncounted, and a province or two might rebel just out of boredom. You probably won't survive this month. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. I always love seeing who's tuning in from the far corners of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake with a grunt and a back spasm, curled next to a warm beast that smells like wet hay and old onions. The relay station is quiet, save for one other courier coughing up last night's millet into the brush. A clay lamp flickers dimly near the stable door. You've got a few minutes before someone yells your name, so you chew on a rice ball that tastes suspiciously like soap and watch the sky shift from black to ash blue. The station's official name is Distant Willow Rest, though no willows grow here and nothing about this place feels restful. It's one of hundreds of waypoints spread like nervous system nodes across the Tang Dynasty's vast imperial body. You're expected to ride up to 40 kilometers between stations, switching horses like worn-out sandals and maybe, if the spirits are kind, getting 5 minutes to not think about your hemorrhoids. Your current steed is a big-limbed Mongolian mare with a habit of biting other horses' ears. You run a hand along her flank and check the saddle, tight, but passable. She nickers and stomps once. That's good enough. Inside the station, a boy no older than 13 is cleaning ink pots and yawning into his sleeve. He's training to be a station scribe, which mostly involves miscopying edicts and spilling tea on appointment records. Still, he's proud. Says his grandfather once saw an envoy from Soviet pass through and handed him a peach. Not the fruit. Just the pit. Claims it's lucky. You adjust your woolen overcoat, one sleeve stitched from what may or may not be repurposed funeral garb, and nod to the relay master, a narrow man with ink-blackened fingers and the temperament of boiled cabbage. He hands you the satchel. Leather, oiled, heavy. Inside are government documents, sealed scrolls, one parchment with a red wax smear and an unnerving smell like burnt incense and dried meat. You don't ask questions. Sometimes, the pouch contains a personal note from a high-ranking official to his mistress 3 provinces away. Other times, it's a bureaucratic death sentence hidden behind metaphors and calligraphy flourishes. Historians still argue whether these couriers were allowed to read what they carried. Officially? No. Realistically? Well, you might have peeked once or twice. As you strap the satchel securely across your back, a rooster somewhere makes a sound like it regrets all its choices. The day is beginning. And what a day it will be. You've got 4 stations to hit before dusk, 2 river crossings, 1 known bandit zone, and a rumor about wolves picking off couriers near the Jin Pass. Your feet already ache, your left knee clicks when you squat, and you're not entirely sure your stomach has forgiven you for yesterday's dried eel. But as the mare trots out onto the dusty path, your spine finally stretching upright, the wind catches your collar and the sun hits your face like a warm slap. You squint toward the horizon. You're not a warrior. You're not a scholar. You're the reason they know what's going on in the next town over. No one will build a statue for you. You won't get mentioned in any temple murals or epic ballads. But you ride anyway, because if you don't, the whole machine creaks to a halt. And also, well, if you stay put too long, you might have to muck out the latrine, and that is its own hell. So you ride. You press your knees into the mare's sides and feel the muscles beneath you respond like coiled springs. The first hour is always the best, before the sun gets angry, before your rear goes numb, before the saddle feels like it's trying to bisect you. The satchel thumps gently against your back with every stride, a dull reminder of your burden. Inside, nestled among scrolls and wrapped in silk to protect it from sweat, rain, or blood, is a single imperial memorandum written in the hand of someone who clearly never had to deliver it. There's also a crumpled note, likely a love letter from one provincial official to another's maid. You think the phrase "as your fragrance lingers like peach blossoms behind my ears" could have used a second draft. Then there's the package wrapped in red cloth and sealed with a wax emblem. That one you don't touch. It hums with the kind of authority that makes even a hungry wolf pause. The Tang postal system, the Ichuan, is your artery. It stretches from the throne in Chang'an to the wind-blown fortresses of the far west, with tributaries heading to Tibet, Korea, and sometimes even into the steppes. You've heard tales of messages making it from the capital to the edge of Central Asia in less than 2 weeks. That's assuming no landslides, no river floods, and no impromptu local rebellions involving flaming carts. So, never, basically. You slow at the bend in the road where the bamboo thins and the first checkpoint of the day appears. A squat watchtower looms beside a dusty trail shrine. The guards are still waking up, one is stretching, one is asleep upright, and one is relieving himself into the bushes while singing something aggressively off-key. You flash your official seal, worn smooth at the edges from overuse, and one of the guards waves you through without even checking your satchel. You could be smuggling in a small opera troupe for all they care. Still, you're part of a class of respected-ish professionals. The state depends on you. Not that anyone throws a festival in your honor, but the fact that the court can dispatch a royal order and expect it to land in someone else's lap halfway across the empire? That's because you showed up for work with your boots full of rice husks and your saddle leaking last night's soup. The satchel holds more than paper. There's a small bronze coin with a square hole, part of a local tax payment being delivered upstream. There's also a sketch of a new irrigation system, drawn by a farmers' guild in the south. Historians still argue whether these technical drawings were treated seriously by officials or just used to line bird cages in the palace. You ride past a crumbling stone marker half-eaten by moss, its characters barely legible. You squint. Something about a lost courier who vanished here with orders of great importance. Probably apocryphal. Or, more realistically, he just fell asleep and got eaten by a bear. It happens. By midday, you reach a fork in the road. One way leads to the next relay station through the scenic route, longer, but easier. The other goes through what the locals call the Sharp Forest, where bandits and ghosts are known to argue over ownership rights. You take the latter. Why? Because you're running late, and also because you're a bit of an idiot. The Sharp Forest earns its name with every overhanging branch and sudden jab of thistle. Your mare is less than pleased, snorting and shaking her mane at every bird call. You duck under vines and try not to imagine how many snakes are watching you with mild amusement. Suddenly, a figure steps into your path. You freeze. Your hand reaches for the dagger strapped to your side, old, chipped, last sharpened during the Sui dynasty. But it's just an old woman, hunched, carrying a basket of mushrooms and muttering something about dreams and ink that bites. You nod politely. She scowls and shuffles off. Not a bandit. Just a reminder that the wilderness has its own employees. Back on the road, you pull out a dried plum and pop it in your mouth. Salty, sour, sharp. Better than the rice balls from earlier. The next stretch is flat, the kind of place where the wind plays tricks on your ears. You think you hear drums once, but it's just your own heartbeat echoing through your helmet. By the time you see the next station's red-tiled roof peeking above the trees, your thighs are burning and your lips are cracked. You whistle, 2 short, 1 long, and the gate swings open. This station is called Cloud Shelter. It smells like onions and ambition. The headmaster here is a woman in her 60s with arms like a retired ox. She takes your horse with one hand and your satchel with the other, muttering about slow riders and faster messages. You sit, finally, under the shade of a withered parasol tree. A scribe brings you water. It's warm. You drink it anyway. The satchel, now lighter, still hangs nearby. A new bundle is added, scrolls bound with blue thread in a folded fan with someone's signature hidden in the folds. You've got 15 minutes to rest, maybe less if another courier arrives. Your mare is already being brushed and fed by a 12-year-old girl who hums a tune you don't recognize. She reminds you of someone. Or maybe you're just tired. No matter. The road awaits. You stretch your legs, wince, and prepare to mount your next steed. It's slightly smaller than your last, with one lazy eye and a sneeze like a drumbeat. You sigh. And ride again. The next leg of your ride is long, silent, and just eerie enough to keep your nerves humming like a struck bell. The path curls upward into hills where mist clings low, reluctant to lift even as the sun climbs. You're heading into terrain you've ridden before, though it never feels the same twice. Sometimes the trees whisper your name. Sometimes they whisper someone else's. You pass a dead tree split in half by lightning last year. You remember it clearly because you were caught in a storm, riding bareback on a half-trained stallion that thought thunder was a personal insult. You still have a scar on your knee where the saddle horn bit you during the panic. Fun times. Your current horse, whom you've mentally nicknamed Sneezy, does not share that drama. He plods uphill like an aging bureaucrat climbing courthouse stairs, grunting on every fifth step. You reach down, pat his neck. He sneezes in reply. You accept this as a conversation. As you ascend, the forest gets older. Not visibly, maybe, but it feels older. Thicker. Like it's been watching people pass for centuries and has a well-developed opinion on the matter. You reach a stretch of road that locals call Silent Mile. There's no birdsong, no wind, not even the rustle of squirrels. Just you, your breathing, and the rhythmic clop of hoofbeats on packed earth. This is where things start to get spooky. They say a courier once rode through here at midnight, chasing a deadline that couldn't wait. His horse returned alone, foaming and wild-eyed. The scroll pouch was torn open, and one letter was never recovered. Some say the forest took it. Others say it was a trap laid by a rival official who wanted that message not delivered. Historians still argue whether that missing message was just a grain inventory or something far more dangerous, like a coded invitation to rebellion. You slow a bit. The trees lean closer now. Their branches stretch like arms, and though it's probably just a trick of the mist, you'd swear some of them bend after you pass. Sneezy lets out a low huff and shakes his head. You nod in agreement. Let's not dawdle. Halfway through Silent Mile, you spot it, a shrine tucked beneath a rock overhang. A stone horse figurine stands watch beside it, weathered and moss-choked, with offerings of millet, dried apples, and a strip of cloth tied in a knot, likely from a courier's sleeve. You dismount without really thinking and bow your head, muttering the usual prayer. May the wind be behind us, the ink dry, the wheels greased, and the gates open. You don't light the incense stick, someone already has. It's still smoldering. That means someone else passed through here recently. You look down the road behind you. No one visible. But the scent lingers like a memory that won't leave the room. You remount, slightly faster than necessary. Out of Silent Mile, the air loosens its grip. Birds reappear. A squirrel yells at you from a branch. You feel your shoulders unhunch. There's a small bridge ahead, wooden and rotting, that crosses a stream too shallow to be useful but too wide to ignore. You dismount again, better to walk across than test Sneezy's commitment to structural engineering. On the other side is a steep descent toward a flat plain. You can see far ahead now. The horizon breaks open like a yawn, and in the far distance you can just make out the white puff of dust, another courier, probably. Or maybe a goat chase gone dramatic. You'll find out in an hour. The plain is dotted with stone markers and ruins of what once might have been administrative posts. You've asked around, but no one really knows. Some say they were old Han outposts. Others claim they were bandit hideouts cleaned out during the founding of the Tang. Still others think they were simply monasteries that got bored of praying and took up paperwork instead. You pass one ruin with a strange symbol carved on its face, a spiral within a spiral. You've seen it before, only once, on a scroll you weren't supposed to read. That one ended up burned. You never found out why. The wind picks up again, teasing your scarf and lifting dust from the dry road. You remount Sneezy and coax him into a slow trot. His hooves leave faint imprints in the dirt, but they vanish almost instantly as the wind brushes them away. Nothing here stays for long, not even memory. The next station comes into view, for low buildings around a well, roof tiles crooked like bad teeth, a horse already tied out front. You arrive and dismount, tossing your reins to a boy who looks like he hasn't slept in 2 days. He tries to smile. Fails. Inside, there's a steaming bowl of broth waiting for you. Chicken, you think. Or turtle. Possibly pigeon. You slurp it in silence while the headmaster checks your satchel, scowling at the seals, flipping scrolls like they personally offended her. She gives you a fresh bundle, sealed in green wax and tied with yellow twine. Odd combination. Means it's coming from the Bureau of Rights. Probably something ceremonial. Possibly something very not ceremonial in disguise. You trade horses again. Your new ride is younger, sleeker, twitchier. It paws the dirt like it's heard rumors about tigers and isn't sure whether it's supposed to be scared or flattered. You thank the boy with the dead eyes and nod to the headmaster, who waves you off without looking up from her bamboo ledger. Out the gate again, into more dust, more wind, more silence. The horizon pulls you forward. And somewhere, just out of view, a storm is building. You smell the next station before you see it. It's not a bad smell, exactly, just memorable. Equal parts manure, old soup, wet straw, and a hint of something herbal that might have once been medicinal but now smells like regret. You tug your scarf higher over your nose and nudge your new steed forward. He doesn't like the smell either, which is rich coming from an animal that licks its own knees. The place is called Elm Shelter, though not a single elm remains standing. Legend says they were chopped down to heat the bathwater for an imperial inspector who passed through and demanded a soak. The bathhouse is gone, the inspector's name forgotten, but the stench remains, like some aromatic revenge. You clatter into the courtyard. A boy with no shoes appears and takes your horse with an enthusiasm usually reserved for street jugglers or pickpockets. You glance at the station's main building, a wooden structure so warped by weather it looks like it's trying to remember how to be a house. Smoke curls from its chimney. You're hopeful. Maybe soup that doesn't involve feathers this time. Inside, it's chaos in slow motion. Two men are arguing over the weight of a grain ledger. A girl is crying softly while mashing garlic with the wrong end of a pestle. A small dog is gnawing on something suspiciously scroll-like under the table. Welcome to the unsung workforce of the Tang Postal Empire. You're greeted by a middle-aged man with soot on his face and eyebrows that have clearly lost arguments with candle flames. He's the cook, he informs you proudly, but also the night scribe, the hoof inspector, and occasionally the rat monitor. He ushers you to a bench and hands you a bowl of thick porridge. It's lukewarm, gritty, and deeply comforting. You nod your thanks and eat without asking questions. Always safer that way. This station isn't a major relay, more of a rest stop built to serve the riders during bad weather or bureaucratic overflow. Which is every other week, really. But it has its charms, a half-functional forge for shoeing horses, a small herb garden out back for treating saddle sores, and a woman named Auntie Lynn who manages every logistical miracle here while somehow still braiding garlic with military precision. You see her now, sitting under a canopy, surrounded by lists, clay tokens, and 4 squawking chickens tied to a bench. She looks up, scans your face, then your satchel, and nods. She doesn't need introductions. She's memorized the rotatio schedule and probably knows the number of gray hairs you've grown since last week. You sit with her while she logs your time, checks the seal on the green wax packet, still intact, and asks whether you passed the shrine on Silent Mile. When you confirm, she goes very still. Says nothing. Slides you a small rice cake. That's for them, she murmurs. Leave it next time. Them. Not him or her or it. Just them. You don't ask. Again, safer that way. You offer help with shoeing your next horse, but she waves you off. The farrier here is an older man with one eye and a back curved like a gourd. He mutters to himself in verse and only answers in rhyme. Some think he's mad. Others say he's a retired scholar who fell in love with horses more than people. Historians still argue whether a poem found etched in a stable wall in Luoyang is one of his early works or just an over-literate groom with a charcoal stick. Your next horse arrives, broad-shouldered, slightly lame in one leg, but with eyes that mean business. You make a mental note to go easy on the pace. As the grooms saddle her, you notice something odd. The station walls are covered with charcoal drawings, sketches of riders, horses, dragons, even a couple of imperial seals drawn in comical proportions. Turns out the station apprentice is an artist. 11 years old, shy, and rarely speaks except in ink. She once sketched an entire courier route from Chang'an to the western garrisons, accurate down to the mile markers. It hangs in the scribe hut now, though the left edge was gnawed by a goat during last autumn's inventory crisis. Outside, a woman with strong hands and a perpetually annoyed expression is scrubbing saddles with vinegar and rice water. She catches you watching and tosses you a rag. You help, of course. There's no real rank here, only roles, and everyone wears 6 of them at once. You learn the station hasn't had a restock of proper ink in 3 months. They're mixing soot with wine lees, which makes for legible writing and frequent sneezing fits. Auntie Len sighs and says the last ink shipment was diverted by an official's nephew who decided to open a calligraphy school. That nephew, it's rumored, now walks with a limp. Before you leave, you rest in a supply hut, if you can call it that. More of a lean-to with baskets of dried root vegetables, old blankets, and 2 live geese that no one seems to be claiming. You sit on a bale of straw and stretch your legs, grateful for 5 minutes of stillness. The station dog, having finished its scroll snack, curls up next to you and farts softly. When it's time to go, you refill your water gourd, accept a wax paper pouch of pickled radish, and bow to Auntie Lynn. She clasps your forearm and tells you to watch for the red flag at the next station. You ask what that means. She just nods. So you ride out again, full belly, new horse, mysterious warning lodged in your ear. Out here, that's what passes for encouragement. You and the new horse, who you're now calling limpid, because of her hitching gait and general attitude of mild resentment, make decent time as you leave Elm Shelter behind. The hills smooth out, the road curves gently, and you almost start to believe the next leg of your journey might be uneventful. Naturally, that's when the stench hits. It's sharp, animalistic, and deeply unsettling, like something large and recently deceased decided to ferment under the sun just off the roadside. You cover your nose with your scarf again, but it doesn't help much. Limpid snorts and stamps the ground. You scan the trees. There's movement ahead, just a flicker. Something's slipping back into the underbrush. You tense. Not bandits. Too quiet. And besides, you'd smell their tobacco before you saw them. No, this feels different. Wilder. Hungrier. You grip the reins tighter, one hand resting on the hilt of your chipped dagger. You've never had to use it on anything larger than a rat, but there's a first time for everything. You pass a broken cartwheel, half buried in leaves. No sign of the cart, or the horse, or the person who was driving it. You don't slow down. You don't look back. By the time the trailing breaks and you emerge onto a wide graveled stretch, the tension begins to drain, just in time for a different kind of trouble. The next relay post is flying a red flag. This is not ceremonial. Auntie Lynn's warning clicks into place. The red flag means one of two things: plague quarantine, or inspection. You pray for the latter. At least inspectors don't make your eyeballs leak. You approach slowly. The outer gate is open, but the courtyard is empty. Too empty. No shouting grooms, no sloshing buckets, no badly tuned flutes from boor apprentices. Just the wind and the soft creak of the flagpole. You dismount, keeping a hand near your dagger. The satchel is still sealed, but you can't shake the feeling that you're walking into a trap designed by paperwork. A door creaks open, and a tall man with a face like burnt parchment steps out. He wears the green robe of a Ministry of Personnel functionary. His eyes sweep over you and limp it like he's inspecting for lice. Courier designation, he asks. You recite your badge number, name, route origin, and estimated time of arrival like a monk muttering scripture. He nods once and gestures you into the scribe room. Inside, things get interesting. 3 other couriers are already seated, each looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. One is bandaged at the temple. One is missing a boot. The third appears to be asleep, but it's hard to tell. He might be meditating. Or dead. The inspector asks to see your satchel. You unbuckle it slowly, handing it over like it might explode. He weighs it in his hand, opens it, and pulls out the green wax bundle first. Frowns. Sets it aside. Then the silk-wrapped letter. He sniffs it. Sniffs it. Not reads. Just sniffs. He then unwraps a scroll marked urgent, Chang'an eyes only, and stares at it for far too long before finally resealing it. With the wrong wax color. Great. Historians still argue whether inspectors like these had real authority or were just bored bureaucrats sent to rural posts as punishment for stealing stationery. Either way, they could ruin your week. You'll wait until further instructions, he says. Which, in civil service terms, means you're stuck here indefinitely. You're herded into the sleeping quarters, which smell like steamed turnips and regret. The floor is lined with straw mats, and one corner houses a dozen clay pots filled with mysterious liquids. You don't ask. You've learned. Time crawls. One courier starts singing folk songs from Sichuan, and you mentally replace the lyrics with tax codes to stay sane. Another breaks out a game of pitchstone, basically Tang-era checkers with rocks and lies. You lose. Twice. Hours later, a young scribe slips into the room and hands you a scrap of paper. It's a release order. With a new satchel. The seal is golden. You don't like that? Gold seals mean politics. You're escorted to the courtyard, where Limpet is already saddled and munching some wilted cabbage. You remount, gritting your teeth. Your knees hurt. Your eyes are dry. You miss the porridge from 3 stations ago. The inspector doesn't say goodbye. Just nods. That's fine. You weren't going to hug anyway. Back on the road, you finally open the pouch to inspect the contents. Inside, nestled in padded silk, is something odd, a carved jade comb, wrapped with a strip of embroidered cloth and a scroll barely thicker than your finger. You can't read it, it's written in a cipher. But the presence of gifts makes things complicated. Are you carrying a proposal of marriage? A threat disguised as court poetry? Historians still debate the exact purpose of these traveling trinkets. Some say they were political messages. Others claim they were love tokens used by nobles too paranoid to send letters directly. Whatever it is, you now have to deliver it to a high-ranking official 2 prefectures away, through territory known for tax revolts and one mildly territorial tiger. Speaking of which, as you ride down a particularly shady stretch, you notice claw marks on a nearby tree trunk. They're fresh. Limpet snorts. You tell yourself it's fine. Tigers don't hunt during daylight. Probably. Still, you nudge Limpet into a canter. Just in case. You've got a long way to go. But the Empire doesn't wait for anyone. Not even the tired. Especially not the tired. By the time you clear the tiger zone, which, let's be honest, probably wasn't even a real tiger zone but just a local excuse for lazy patrols, your nerves have calmed down enough to feel your hunger again. You suck on a piece of candied ginger pulled from a pouch at your waist and try not to think too hard about the trail ahead. The land here flattens into soft valleys, broken by the occasional rice paddy or lone watchtower. Farmers pause to watch you pass, some nodding, most ignoring you. You've long accepted that you're basically moving furniture to them. Swift, sweating furniture with a satchel of secrets and an unpredictable digestive tract. The next stop is a small station with only 2 permanent staff, a stable boy named Hu and a cook scribe named Madame Zhou. They operate out of a pair of clay buildings with sagging roofs and a chicken that may or may not have diplomatic immunity. The station's real pride, though, is its scribal hut, a crooked, 3-walled lean-to that houses a stack of bamboo slips taller than you and ink made from walnuts, soot, and one surprisingly aggressive mushroom. You dismount and hand Limpet off to who takes one look at her, tuts, and mutters about hoof rot and rider speed trauma. He leads her away with the grim professionalism of someone who's seen too many sore horses and too few pay raises. Inside the scribal hut, Madame Zhou greets you with the familiar groan of someone who expected a nap instead. She's ancient, wrinkled like dried plum skin, but her brushwork is so precise it could shame palace calligraphers. Her writing table is a mosaic of ink stains, crumbs, and little notes in the margins of imperial reports that probably say things like, "This governor is clearly lying." You hand her the jade comb and the encrypted scroll. She doesn't ask what's inside. She just stares at the scroll for a long while, fingers hovering above it as though reading its weight more than its characters. Then she sets it gently aside and starts boiling tea. While she works, you glance at the wall, where slips of bamboo hang from pegs, each marked with names, dates, and a single character, either past, missing, or final. You don't ask what they mean. But you already know. Madame Zhou pours you a cup of tea that smells faintly like mint and betrayal. You sip it slowly while she pulls out her brushes and begins copying one of the newly arrived edicts onto thin paper. The brush dances, thick strokes, then thin, rising like windblown reeds. While she copies, she talks. Not to you. Just talks. "Did you hear," she says, "about the eunuch envoy who brought a gift of black pearls to the empress's cousin? Claimed it was from a southern prince. Turns out the pearls were dyed fish eyes, and the envoy hasn't been seen since." You nod slowly. She continues. "Some messages are lies. Some are lies that keep peace. And some are just time bombs wrapped in poetry." She hands you a new bundle, 2 scrolls, one marked with the emblem of the Bureau of Waterworks, the other simply blank. No label, no seal, just bound with a green cord. The blank ones are always the worst. Historians still argue whether these unmarked scrolls were decoys, hidden orders, or just poorly labeled correspondence. You once carried one all the way to the governor of Guiyang, only to discover it contained a very detailed list of recommended shoe styles for civil servants over 40. Back outside, who has finished brushing Limpet and wrapped her back leg with a poultice made from mulberry sap and something that smells deeply illegal. You thank him, swing into the saddle, and brace yourself. You're only 1/3 done for the day. As you ride out, Madame Zhou calls after you. Mind the river crossing, she says. It's misbehaving. You want to ask what that means, but she's already vanished back into her hut like an ink-drenched ghost. You reach the river an hour later. It's not wide, but it's full of attitude. The bridge is gone, washed out, possibly stolen. Locals say a recent storm turned the quiet stream into a snarling beast that bit the bridge clean off its pilings. Someone tied a rope across to help guide crossings, but it sags like an exhausted metaphor. You debate. Try to find another path? Wait for help? Or go full hero mode? Naturally, you go hero mode. Bad decision, as usual. You dismount, strip off your overcoat, and tie your scroll satchel to your back like a baby. Limpet is unconvinced. She digs in her hooves, eyes the water like it owes her money. You wade in first. The current is stronger than expected, pushing against your thighs with the confidence of unpaid taxes. Still, you press on, calling to Limpet, who eventually follows with the grace of a soggy loaf of bread. Halfway across, you slip. You go under for just a moment, but it's enough to send panic skittering through your limbs. You gasp, scramble, clutch the rope, and emerge coughing river water that tastes like fish spit and disappointment. But you make it. Barely. Limpet shakes herself out like a wet dog, soaking you all over again. You don't even care. Soaked, sore, and now very much behind schedule, you press onward. The road rises gently ahead, and in the distance, you see the next station, just a flicker of tile roof and a fluttering banner. You pray it's not red this time. You're still dripping when you arrive at the next relay station, and naturally, the first thing anyone says is, "You smell like a dead frog." Which is accurate, though not entirely fair. You also smell like wet leather and state secrets. This place is newer than the others. Clean roofs, painted beams, and a suspicious absence of chickens. It's called East Wind Haven, which is already a lie. The wind here comes from every direction except the east. You hand off Limpet, whose mood improves considerably when a stable hand scratches her behind the ears and offers her something better than fear and brackish river water. Inside the scribal hall, a clerk waves you in with the enthusiasm of someone who's been waiting all day to be disappointed. He's dressed in crisp robes, which instantly makes you suspicious. Real couriers and staff don't stay clean. If they're clean, they're either new or dangerous. You hand over your satchel. He handles it like it's full of spiders. He sets it on the low table in the center of the hall and calls for another clerk. Then another. Soon, there's a small assembly of ink-stained bureaucrats standing around your delivery like it's a cursed relic. You're getting nervous. And then someone produces the cipher sheet. Now this is where things get fun. See, sometimes you carry encoded documents, messages written in a system of poetic substitutions, idiomatic flourishes, and tone-shifting couplets that can mean wildly different things depending on who's reading. This one's wrapped in patterned silk and tied with a knot so specific, it's essentially a password made of thread. They untie it carefully. Then they just stare at it. "I think it says send troops immediately," says one. "No," says another, "it clearly means the rice supply is corrupted." "You're both wrong. It says, the official in question must be removed by any means." Look at the metaphor in line 3. Historians still argue over the Tang Dynasty's use of metaphorical language in political communication. Was it a way to bypass censorship? Or simply an exercise in poetic ego? In the meantime, messengers like you were stuck carrying scrolls that might mean deliver more grain or assassinate your boss, depending on whether the reader had a good breakfast. They finally decide to leave the scroll sealed and forward it to a higher bureau in Chang'an. Which means you'll probably be tasked with that delivery too. Lucky you. But your job doesn't stop there. While you're eating a sad bowl of barley porridge in the corner, someone hands you a second scroll, short, unmarked, but carrying the distinctive scent of redwood oil. You know what that means. It's a message from the Corps of Censors. These were the imperial watchdogs, part judge, part investigator, part snooping gossip columnist. If they're sending something by courier and not their own agents, it means either urgency or misdirection. Possibly both. You're told to ride straight through Yen Pass without stopping. You glance at the sky. Clouds are brewing. The sun's on its way down. Great. Before you leave, You find yourself standing near the calligraphy table of one of the junior scribes. She's maybe 16, hair tied in a neat bun, sleeves rolled up, brush in hand. She's copying out a poem onto yellow paper. Not an official document, just something personal, probably. You glance at it while she looks away. It reads, "Let not the ink dry on a name unspoken, nor time erase the writer's weary trace." You feel something in your chest tighten. You don't ask who it's for. You just nod and step back into your boots. Your new horse is lean, fast, and apparently named Thunder Cheese by the previous courier. You don't ask. Frankly, it's the least odd thing you've seen all week. The road to Yen Pass is narrow and winding, a trail built by stubbornness and held together by tradition. You ride hard, hooves pounding rock, scroll tied tight to your chest. You pass rice fields, pine woods, and an abandoned shrine where someone has drawn a smiley face on the god's mouth. You salute it. Might help. Halfway up the incline to the pass, you notice movement ahead. Not bandits. Not animals. Just people. Standing. 2 men. 1 woman. Dressed like merchants, but with hands too clean and eyes too sharp. You slow Thunder Cheese. The wind picks up. "Courier," one of them calls. Friendly voice. Too friendly. You nod, hand hovering near your dagger. "Need help with directions?" You shake your head. That's not a question. It's a test. You urge Thunder Cheese forward without answering. One of them steps aside with a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. As you pass, you hear the woman murmur, "Wrong courier." Then a soft whistle. You don't turn around. You ride. Whatever was in that message, it wasn't meant for just anyone to carry. Someone tried to intercept it. Maybe not you, specifically. But a courier. A message. This route. You make it to the top of Yen Pass just as the sun tips below the mountains. There's a checkpoint post here, barely more than a tent and a gong. You hand off the scroll to a guard with a lopsided helmet, and he signs your bamboo slip with a thumbprint that smells like pickled garlic. Then you collapse against the side of the tent, heart pounding. Night comes fast in the highlands. You're offered a spot near the fire. You take it. Thunder Cheese is stabled with a blanket and a blessing. You eat dried beans and rice crusts. No one talks much. You stare into the flames, remembering the girl's poem, the men on the road, the scent of redwood. You're starting to suspect you're delivering more than just news these days. You're delivering consequences. You don't sleep well. The ground is lumpy, the wind cuts through the fabric of the tent like it's auditioning for a knife commercial, and someone nearby has the kind of snore that sounds like a drowning ox. You pull your cloak tighter, try not to think about assassins, and eventually drift off somewhere between a paranoid blink and a prayer you barely remember. By morning, the fire's out and your legs feel like someone replaced your bones with wet bamboo. But Thunder Cheese is alert, the sky is clear, and the checkpoint guards gift you a wedge of dried pear wrapped in wax paper. A rare act of generosity, probably because they're hoping you'll forget about the lice and the sleeping mats. You ride out from Yen Pass with a fresh satchel. It's lighter this time. Just 2 scrolls, one tied in purple silk, the other waxed shut in a plain tube with no markings. You almost prefer the obvious political missives. At least you know they're dangerous. The road begins to widen as you descend, sloping toward a lowland plain where fields stretch like painted silk under a fast-warming sun. You're not alone anymore. Other riders move in the distance, messengers, tax collectors, even a few monks with shaved heads and travel staves. Some nod as they pass. Some don't. Everyone's got somewhere to be. Then, from the corner of your eye, you spot something strange. A small farmhouse near the edge of a poppy field. A woman stands out front, hanging laundry. But beside her is a table with inkstones, brushes, and 4 bamboo scrolls drying in the sun. You slow Thunder Cheese, curious. Courier training teaches you to observe, but not interfere. Still, you've seen that particular wax pattern before. The woman isn't just a farmer. She's part of the hidden network. There's a secret beneath the Tang courier system that few ever write about. In isolated villages, where official scribes rarely reach, women often served as unofficial transcriptionists, copying, storing, and even encrypting messages under the guise of domestic work. Some were widows of former officials. Others, daughters of court scholars sent away for safety. Still others were simply literate and clever. Historians still debate how widespread this quiet workforce really was. But anyone who's ever carried an ink-stained scroll with a floral-smelling cord has met their work. You dismount. She doesn't flinch. You offer her a respectful bow, and she returns it, eyes sharp as pins. Without a word, she opens a small lacquer box and retrieves a cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, one scroll, no seal. You exchange one of your own, freshly stamped. No receipts, no ledgers. But the empire still moves. Back on the road, your mind spins. What was in that unmarked scroll? Who decided this woman, living halfway between nothing and nowhere, was safer than a palace official? The power of the courier isn't just speed. It's trust. You pass a checkpoint by late morning. The guard is bored and chewing what might be seaweed or a piece of his own boot. He waves you through with barely a glance. You don't argue. Never interrupt a man enjoying his mystery snack. After that, the terrain flattens completely. The wind picks up. Dust begins to sting your face like paper cuts. You tie a cloth over your nose and press on. By mid-afternoon, your next stop appears, Little Reed Post, a tiny station wedged between a canal and a pig farm. The pigs are louder. The station's barely bigger than a granary. But it's here that you meet someone unexpected. A boy, 12, maybe 13, is waiting by the gate. He holds a folded document with both hands like it's a sacred text. His eyes are red. His cheeks are streaked with dirt and maybe tears. You dismount slowly. My father, he says. He was supposed to be back. You blink. Your father? He was a courier. Went out 10 days ago. The headmaster says he never checked in at the next post. But I know he wouldn't. He wouldn't just not come back. You glance at the paper he holds. It's a missing courier notice. Issued from the Bureau of Writers. Rare. Painful. You take it gently. Memorize the name. Chen Yao. Route 47B, Western Ridge Circuit. You know that route. It's steep. Bandit-prone. Poor weather protection. You passed the southern edge of it 2 days ago. You remember seeing a wrecked cart beneath a ravine but thought nothing of it, probably a farmer's misfortune. Your stomach tightens. You tell the boy what you can. He nods, biting his lips so hard it leaves a mark. Inside, the station keeper, an old man with cataracts and breath like fermented yum, logs your papers while humming a tune with no rhythm. You ask about Chen Yao. He shakes his head. Brave lad. Worked fast. But got assigned to a border message. Dangerous folk out that way. He says it like he's talking about a thunderstorm. Inevitable. Impersonal. You take your usual soup and dried bean cake, but your appetite's gone. The boy's still outside when you leave. He waves. You wave back. Not all couriers come home. That's the unspoken part of the job description. Your next horse is younger. Eager. A bit too much so. You name him Dumb Arrow after the way he tries to gallop into fences. He settles after a stern talking to and a handful of mung beans. You ride under a sky that's turned the color of old parchment. Clouds mass on the horizon, thick and low. You'll be caught in rain tonight. You can feel it. You think of the boy. Of Chen Yao. Of the ink-stained woman near the poppy field. Of the poem back at East Wind Haven. Of the girl who wrote it and the man on the road who called you the wrong courier. You are starting to wonder, whose message are you carrying now? Not just physically, but ideologically. There are things brewing. Beneath the paper. Between the ink. You feel them. Not with proof, but in the silence between hoofbeats. The storm breaks as the sun drops behind the horizon, as if the heavens were waiting for dramatic effect. First comes the wind, hard, impatient, shoving against your face like a bureaucrat on a deadline. Then the rain, sheets of it, slapping your cloak and soaking you to the bone within minutes. Dumb Arrow is not impressed. He slows to a stubborn trudge, ears pinned flat. You, meanwhile, are trying to keep your precious scrolls dry by shoving them inside your tunic like awkwardly shaped children. There's no shelter in sight, only the road and the suggestion of trees in the distance. The world is suddenly a painting done entirely in smudged gray ink. You spot a faint lantern glow up ahead, low, flickering, but real. You push Dumb Arrow toward it. It's a makeshift rest stop. Not an official station, but one of those semi-sanctioned shacks set up by retired riders who still feel the itch of the road. These places aren't on any map, but they're whispered about in the margins of the job like secret tea shops or forbidden ballads. The man inside is as wiry as a bowstring and twice as tense. His beard is held together by weather and stubbornness, and he eyes you like you're a suspicious invoice. You carrying state? You nod. He grunts, jerks a thumb toward a pile of straw near the wall. Sleep there. No noise. You strip off your soaked cloak, place your satchel above the hearth where the rain can't reach, and collapse into the straw like it owes you money. The heat from the fire crawls into your bones slowly, as if unsure whether it's welcome. The old courier doesn't talk much, but he does offer tea, bitter, herbal, brewed in a cracked gourd. You drink it even though it tastes like burned celery. He finally sits down across from you, near the hearth. You ever lost one? He asks. You blink. Message? He shakes his head. Writer. You nod slowly. Chen Yao. He doesn't react. Just tosses another stick on the fire. You'll lose more. Or you'll be one. Not the best bedtime story, but it's honest. You spend the night half asleep, dreaming of messages that talk and scrolls that bite. In one dream, a letter opens itself and whispers, "Do you know what you're really delivering?" You wake before dawn, sore but grateful for the dry boots. The rain's let up, though the road is now a slurry of regret and horse poop. The old man hands you a bundle of dried turnip slices and a slip of paper. Deliver that to the Chang'an lot if you make it. You look at the slip. It's a name. No seal. Just a name and a province. You nod and tuck it into your pouch. Back on Dumb Arrow, you slosh forward into dawn. You pass two herders with blank stares and sheep that look smarter than they are. One of them spits into the mud and asks if you're the one carrying the cursed scroll. You don't answer. Mostly because you don't know anymore. You reach a wide road, a major artery now. Brick paved, clear of debris, lined with mile markers painted in imperial red. You've entered high-priority territory. This road feeds directly into the capital's northern flank. But you're not going there just yet. Your next delivery is to a regional governor with an estate so large it probably has its own climate. The building appears over the hill like a crown placed too heavily on a sleeping head. It's all curved roofs, lacquered gates, and guards with expressions carved from impatience. They make you wait. Of course they do. You sit outside for an hour while your boots dry and your spine becomes furniture. A scribe finally ushers you in with a sigh. The governor's reading when you arrive. Not a report. Not a poem. A menu. He accepts the scroll with 2 fingers like it might be sticky. Breaks the wax seal without looking up. Then he reads. And frowns. And reads again. And sets it aside. That's all, you ask, because curiosity, like damp wool, clings. He nods. You may go. But something in his voice says don't. So you wait another breath. Then he mutters, tell no one you delivered this. Great. Just great. You bow and back away. You get halfway down the estate's front path before you hear the shouting begin behind you. Paper rustling. Someone calling for a steward. A door slamming. You don't stop. You get back on Dumb Arrow and ride. Later that afternoon, you meet another courier coming the other direction. He's older, face like sun-dried tofu, and carrying a blood-stained satchel. You nod. He nods. Neither of you asks. These kinds of meetings, quiet, fast, wordless, are what keep the empire turning. Like gears. Sharp-edged. Greased with sweat, soot, and a little dread. You ride into the evening, passing statues of mythical beasts and one shrine where someone's left a fish carved from jade. You pause, leave an offering of turnip slices. By nightfall, you see the lights of the capital flickering in the distance. Chang'an. Big. Beautiful. Dangerous. And you? You're just a courier. But tonight, you're also the thread tying something together. You just don't know what. Yet. You enter Chang'an under a dusk sky the color of old copper. The guards at the west gate barely glance at your papers. They see your mud-spattered cloak, the satchel on your hip, and the horse that looks like it's one insult away from quitting life entirely. You're no threat. You're a courier. But the city sees you. Not the people, mind you. They sweep past in waves, silk-robed merchants yelling at apprentices, barefoot kids darting between carts, and stern-faced monks gliding by like clouds with opinions. You're invisible to them. But the city notices. Like it knows you've ridden through bandit country, through plague rumors, through rivers and roads that tried to swallow you. And still, here you are. You follow the main avenue, Vermilion Bird Street, toward your final station. The capital pulses around you. Lanterns swinging, bells chiming, hawkers calling out pickled things in 8 dialects. You smell 5 types of dumpling and at least one incense that could double as insecticide. The Tang Postal Office in Chang'an is a sprawling compound near the outer bureaucracy district. Not quite palace adjacent, but close enough that if someone threw a shoe over the wall, it might hit a tax auditor. You dismount. Delmero gives you a look that says he's retiring the moment this delivery is over. You pat his flank and lead him toward the stables, where an underfed boy with calligraphy ink on his ear welcomes him with a sigh and a bucket of grain. Inside the office, the walls are stacked high with bamboo slips, ledger books, and more paperwork than any one empire should be allowed to generate. The floor creaks with history and foot odor. You report to the intake clerk, a round man with a voice like a shout flute and a hairstyle that appears to have given up halfway through. He logs your arrival, scrolls through a scroll, yes, scrollception, and asks, "Did you carry the yen pass cipher?" You nod. He scribbles something. Then he gestures to a side room. "Processing officer wants to see you." That's unusual. You head down a side hall into a room that smells faintly of plum ink and roasted chestnuts. Behind the desk sits a woman wearing crimson robes, neatly arranged, not flashy. Her eyes are sharp, her hands precise. You've heard of her. Processing Officer May. Nicknamed Papercut, because she's sharp, silent, and leaves a mark. She motions for you to sit. "I've read the duplicate cipher," she says, skipping pleasantries like they're tax. "Do you know what it said?" You shake your head. "Of course not," she murmurs, half to herself. "Still, you were watched. You know that?" You nod. The road near Yen Pass. The two clean merchants. The intercepted scrolls. You know. She leans forward. The message never made it. Your stomach drops. She holds up the scroll. It's blank. Utterly, unforgivingly blank. It was switched. Your mind races. When? Where? You never let it out of your sight. Except maybe, at that one checkpoint. Or with the inspector. Or when the apprentice spilled tea and you had to step outside. Historians still argue whether courier sabotage was a widespread practice or just isolated paranoia, but you're not debating. You're living it. Officer May sighs. She waves over an aide, who brings her a new scroll. This one's sealed in gold and red. Take this to the Ministry of Rights. Personally. No detours. And if anyone asks your name, give a false one. You blink. Why? Because someone knew your route. And they knew what you were carrying. We don't think they were aiming for you, just any rider. You're dismissed with no further explanation. That's how you know it's serious. You ride to the ministry on a borrowed horse, a spirited white gelding named Song, whose only flaw is that he hates bridges. Which is unfortunate because Chang'an has 26 of them. The ministry is as pristine as the rumors say. Carved pillars, decorative ponds, and a floor polished so well you can see your worst decisions in it. An attendant in peacock blue robes receives your scroll, hands you a receipt carved into jade, and asks no questions. Good. You're out of answers. On your way back, you pass a small courtyard where scribes are teaching children to write poetry in sand. One girl pauses to ask her teacher, who brings the emperor his letters. You slow, just for a moment. The teacher smiles. Someone brave. Someone fast. You wait for someone important. But it never comes. That's fine. That's the job. Back at the office, you sit in the courtyard and remove your boots. The skin on your heel is raw. Your shoulders ache. And yet, you feel the oddest thing. Pride. Not the noisy kind. Not the sort that wears medals or sings songs. Just the quiet kind that knows, without you, the empire would unravel. Not with a bang, but with a whimper of undelivered news. You rest your head back against the sun-warmed wall, watching the clouds drift above Chang'an like messages sent by the sky itself. You're tired. But the satchel is empty. And for now, that's enough. You're granted a rare full day of rest. At least, that's what they say. What it means is that you're not officially scheduled for a route, but you're still expected to breathe near the office in case someone misplaces a scroll, loses a camel, or discovers a map drawn upside down. You take advantage of the break as best you can. First stop, the bathhouse. You pay the discounted courier rate, which gets you access to a private basin roughly the size of a teacup and a bar of soap that smells like it lost a fight with a beetroot. But the water is hot, your muscles start to uncoil, and for once, nothing's trying to bite you, bribe you, or question your seal. You close your eyes and let yourself float. And that's when the knock comes. Of course it does. A junior clerk is waiting outside, apologetic and soaking with sweat. He hands you a note, written on pressed mulberry paper and sealed with a forget-me-not pressed into wax. You recognize the emblem. It's from the Widows' Division. Now before you get ideas, this isn't a group of lonely noble women hosting tea parties. This is a real but rarely spoken of arm of the Tang bureaucracy, widows, female scribes, and retired palace ladies who copy, memorize, and quietly move messages too sensitive, or too subtle, for normal channels. You dry off, dress, and follow the address. It's a small house in the Shadow Reed district, wedged between an herb vendor and a tofu seller who seems to yell at birds more than customers. You knock. A woman answers. Mid-50s, elegant despite the ink stain on her sleeve. Her eyes are sharp. You're earlier than expected. You shrug. Fewer tigers in the city. She steps aside and leads you to a rear chamber filled with scrolls, lacquered boxes, and one severely judgmental cat. She hands you a small packet, red silk, no wax, tied with a thread of horsehair. Old school. Take this to the southern quarter. Deliver it only to a man who asks for jade rain in spring. Say nothing else. This is courier work, all right, covert, precise, and probably more dangerous than anything marked urgent in imperial crimson. You slip the packet into your satchel and head south. The southern quarter is louder, rougher, and smells like the kind of stew no one admits to cooking. You navigate through noodle stalls, spice wagons, and street performances involving a monkey and a suspiciously well-dressed goose. You finally find him, a man selling brush handles near a lantern shop. You ask, casually, would you happen to carry jade rain in spring? He stiffens slightly, then nods. You pass him the silk packet without flair. He vanishes into a side alley. You don't follow. You head back to the office, stomach grumbling. It's long past lunchtime, and your only nourishment so far has been 2 candied chestnuts and some worry. At the post house, a visiting writer is recounting a story to a gaggle of clerks. Apparently, one of the Western couriers found a letter buried under a shrine, sealed with the emperor's mark, dated 15 years ago. Never delivered. Some say it was a mistake. Others think it was hidden for a reason. Historians still argue whether that letter ever reached its destination, or if it was better that it didn't. You sit in the courtyard, watching a stablehand play keep away with a goat and a stolen ink brush. You reflect on your own deliveries. Some of them mundane, others strange, and some quietly monumental. You remember the cipher that vanished in your hands, the scroll swapped without your knowing, and the name on the slip from the old courier at the storm shelter. You still have it. You haven't delivered it yet. You unfold the paper. It simply says, Jiaofeng, Imperial Archive Vault 3. No context. No instruction. You take a breath, then walk. The archive is a fortress disguised as a building, layers of red walls, bronze doors, and guards with little sense of humor. You flash your badge and are escorted down into the cool, dry corridors where the air smells of time itself. Vault 3 is small, locked, but your guide, an elderly man with exactly one eyebrow, takes the slip, reads the name, and nods. He lets you in. Inside is a scholar, young, bespectacled, ink on his hands like tattoos of truth. He's surrounded by scrolls thicker than your thigh. You hand him the note. He reads it, blinks, then sits down and whispers, "He made it?" You don't reply. Just bow. Back on the street, you feel something odd, closure. Not big, not blaring, but quiet, like a page turned in a book no one else is reading. That night, you return to your bunk, exhausted in a good way. You dream of roads, familiar and new, and scrolls that glow faintly like lanterns in the dark. You don't know what tomorrow's route will bring, but you'll ride it, because it's yours. The next morning begins before the sun even considers making an appearance. You're woken by a bell, not a pleasant temple bell, mind you, but the station's metal clangor that sounds like 2 pans having an argument. You groan, pull yourself out of a dream that may have involved flying scrolls, and brace for orders. And sure enough, there's a new assignment posted on the board. Route 14D, Priority Crimson, signature required, no detours. Destination, Governor's Compound in Lingzhou. You blink. That's a long ride. 2 days minimum, 3 if the river's high or your horse decides to hold a personal protest. But there's no room to argue. You've done worse. You've survived worse. You're assigned a horse named Mint Sauce. Don't ask. He's fast. Not smart, but fast. You saddle up, check your satchel, sealed scroll, red ribbon, sharp corners, and take a deep breath. Then you ride. The road out of Chang'an feels different now. Not because the scenery's changed, it hasn't. Same tea stalls, same carp ponds, same old man shouting at clouds. But you have changed. You're no longer just carrying documents. You're starting to feel the gravity of the network. The pulse of the empire running through your hands, your horse's hooves, and your every aching rib. At the first checkpoint, a delay. The guards are arguing over a counterfeit travel pass. A merchant is swearing he's innocent while a constable pokes suspiciously at his wine barrels. You consider skipping around the mess, but your seal only grants access through official lanes. So you wait. Eat a turnip. Hum a song you don't remember learning. Finally, one of the guards waves you forward with a nod and the warning. Road ahead's been loud. Loud? Riots, maybe. Or weddings. Hard to tell this time of year. You file that away and ride on. Hours pass. The road narrows. The sky grumbles. Ahead, a village sprawls across both sides of a sluggish canal. Smoke rises. Not kitchen smoke. Thicker. You approach slowly. Cautiously. It's not a riot. It's not a wedding. It's bureaucracy. An entire village has gathered around the magistrate's house. There's yelling, flapping documents, and at least 3 elderly women shaking brooms like weapons. You edge around the fray, looking for someone who won't try to recruit you into a civil uprising. You find a young clerk crouched behind a pile of grain sacks, looking traumatized. What happened, you ask. He sighs. Tax misprint. Someone added an extra 0. Now everyone thinks they own 900 strings of cash. You wince. Ouch. The scribe responsible has gone into hiding, possibly inside a water urn. You nod respectfully. It's a solid plan. Need help? You offer, half out of pity, half out of curiosity. He shakes his head. Just get to Lingzhou. They'll need to fix this before it spreads. So it's not just a scroll you're carrying, it's a bomb. A bureaucratic bandage for a mistake that could spiral into chaos. Mint Sauce snorts like he knows he's delivering national emotional stability. You press on. As the sun sets, the fields around you turn golden. You pass farmers harvesting millet, children chasing ducks, and one man serenading a goat with a 2-stringed lute. No judgment. At the next station, a cramped hut behind a tea house, you find an old friend. Rin. Courier since before you were born. His beard is now more white than black, and his horse looks older than history itself, but his eyes still sparkle with mischief. Well, well, he says. Look who survived the red flag shuffle. You grin. Barely. He pours tea. No questions. No demands. Just warmth, liquid and otherwise. You share stories. He tells you about the time he carried a scroll from the emperor to a monastery during a lightning storm, lost 3 teeth but kept the message dry. You tell him about the Tiger Zone. He laughs until he coughs. Then he says something odd. You ever wonder who writes these messages we carry? You frown. Officials? Sure. Some. But not all. Sometimes it's people behind the curtain. Voices with no name. Ideas disguised as orders. You ever deliver a scroll that made something worse? You don't answer. He doesn't push. But the question sits with you long after you've left. That night, you camp in an old relay ruin, half walls, moss-covered roof tiles, and a fox who stares at you like you've parked in its living room. You light a fire, eat dried yam, and stare at the sealed scroll in your lap. You don't open it. You wouldn't. But you wonder. What if it's a reassignment? What if it's an execution order? What if it's just another tax correction that'll make someone cry? The empire runs not on truth, but on delivery. You're not the judge. You're the current. You fall asleep under a sky full of stars and unspoken questions. Dawn comes in soft and gray, the clouds stretching like wrinkled silk across the sky. You pack your satchel, saddle up mint sauce, and ride before the fox wakes. The path to Lingzhou curves southeast through farmland and marshy lowlands. It should be peaceful. It should be. Instead, it gets theatrical. About 10 li outside the city boundary, you hear shouting. Not angry shouting. Not joyous shouting. Organized shouting. The kind that comes from people who've rehearsed. As you round a bend in the road, you come upon a procession. Bright banners flap in the wind, Drums beat in rhythm, and a group of villagers, maybe 50 strong, march in what looks like a protest. Sort of. But with props. They carry scrolls mounted on sticks, parodying real imperial edicts with calligraphy that says things like, "Let the rice be twice taxed, for clearly we have too much, and 1,000 bowls of porridge for the inspector's cat." It's satire. Sharp. Surprisingly well executed. You edge closer and see a man in the lead dressed like a governor, his robes made from stitched-together curtains, his fake beard held on with pine sap. He's bellowing proclamations in a voice that wouldn't be out of place in a traveling opera. Let the people eat mud cakes. For lo, they are full of minerals. The crowd cheers and waves fans printed with exaggerated official stamps. You dismount. Slowly. Carefully. You're still wearing your courier badge, which means you might as well be a walking government billboard. But before you can turn around, someone notices you. "Hey! A rider!" The parody governor points. The crowd turns. And now 50 faces stare at you like you're a surprise guest at a play where no one thought the emperor might actually show up. You raise both hands. "I'm just passing through." Someone calls, "What's in the bag?" Another, "Tell the capital we're starving for justice, and for actual millet." Then a voice from the back shouts, "Do you even read what you carry?" You pause. "No," you reply honestly. "And when I do, I usually regret it." The crowd laughs. Tension cracks. The parody governor lowers his fan. Steps forward. He's younger than you expected. Eyes like smoke. Voice suddenly softer. "You're a real one. Not the cause. Just the courier." You nod. He sighs. "Then at least deliver this." He hands you a scroll. Handwritten. Smudged. Wrapped in cloth. "Give it to the next real inspector you see." You tuck it gently into your saddlebag, next to the official Langzhou dispatch. One scroll to hold the system up. Another to question if the system deserves to stand. By the time you reach the city gates, the protesters have vanished into the fields. Langzhou rises from the plain like an afterthought made grand. Big walls. Tall towers. A river slicing through it like punctuation. You ride to the governor's estate, gilded gates, polished guards, and a sign that says, "Visitors must be sanctioned." You are. Barely. You're ushered in, sat on a bench shaped like a dragon that has clearly eaten several unworthy messengers before you, and told to wait. You do. 4 hours. Finally, you're called. Inside, the governor is younger than most. Ambitious. Immaculately dressed. And far too curious about you. "You carried this from Chang'an?" You nod. "No detours?" "Just one theater troupe with very strong political opinions." He frowns. "You read it?" "No, sir." He breaks the seal. Reads. Then reads again. Then stares at you like you wrote it. "This is a reassignment order." You blink. "For who?" He doesn't answer. Instead, he pulls out another scroll. Shows it to you. It's the same order, only this one bears your name. Now you frown. You didn't carry that scroll. But he has it. He studies you. Carefully. "Someone's playing a game," he murmurs. "And using couriers as pieces." You want to deny it. But you remember the cipher that vanished. The widow's message. The fox shrine. The scrolls switched in the storm. You stand. "Do I still have a route?" He considers. Then hands you a different satchel. Plain. No marks. Lighter than it should be. "Take this to the Jade Gate, the westernmost border of the Tang Empire. You're being sent out. Way out. Is it a reward? A punishment? A diversion?" You don't ask. Because sometimes, the writer isn't meant to know. Sometimes, it's safer not to. You bow. Step outside. Mint sauce is waiting. He doesn't ask questions either. You mount. Adjust your scarf. And ride west. The ride west feels longer than it should. Not just in distance, but in implication. The Jade Gate is more than a place. It's a symbol. It's the Empire's ANCAP. A threshold between known and unknown. Civilization and wilderness. Order and the creeping edge of uncertainty. You pass the outer provinces over the next 2 days, stations growing further apart, roofs more sun-faded, walls less straight. The riders are leaner here. The grooms don't speak unless necessary. The ink used to sign your checkpoint papers is thinner, cheaper. But the eyes watching you, those? Sharper than ever. At one of the last stops before the desert, A scribe offers you tea and asks casually, "What's the message?" You shrug. "No idea." He smiles, but not with his mouth. "Good answer." The terrain flattens. Hills vanish. The wind now comes with grains of sand in it, as if the land is slowly trying to rub itself out. You press forward. By now, Mint Sauce has settled into the rhythm of this ride, as if he knows this path is unlike the others. His ears twitch less. His breathing stays calm. You begin to suspect he's smarter than you gave him credit for, perhaps even far smarter than you. Typical. The final station before the Jade Gate is named Last Tea Pavilion, and it lives up to the poetry. One wind-warped structure. 3 pine trees trying to pretend they're still alive. A woman inside serves you bitter tea and dried fish while never making eye contact. The only words she offers are, "Next outpost is military." Don't stray. You nod and leave a coin. It's probably not enough. The road to the Jade Gate is lonely in a way even silence can't describe. No birds. No ox carts. No monks humming in the brush. Just you, Mint Sauce, the scroll in your satchel, and the steady rhythm of hoofbeats on compacted sand. You pass ancient mile markers, some toppled, some leaning like tired men. A few have carvings too weathered to read. One still bears a trace of paint, the symbol for end. You don't know if it means the end of the road, or something else. You reach the Jade Gate just before dusk. It isn't made of jade. Never was. It's stone, weathered, blunt, functional. The name is aspirational. Like calling a well Silver Spring when it mostly smells of frog. The guards are silent and young. They search your horse but not your eyes. You're waved through to the central courtyard, where you're met by a commander whose armor is dusty and whose scroll case is shaped like a coffin. "You're late," he says, even though you're not. He gestures you toward a tent, lit from within by flickering lamplight. You step inside. A single desk. A single chair. And one man, sitting. His robes are simple. His hair is short. His hands are stained with ink. You don't recognize him. But he clearly knows you. "You've carried documents for over 6 years," he begins. "You've handled ciphers, complaints, love letters, and death warrants. You've seen 3 riots, 4 reassignment orders, and at least 2 scrolls that changed the course of entire prefectures." You blink. Slowly. "How many of them did you read?" he asks. You hesitate. "Only one. By accident." He smiles. "Almost. The one you carry now, don't open it. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's unfinished." You frown. "Unfinished?" He stands, walks to the desk, and places a blank scroll on the table. It's an invitation. For a meeting. No date. No name. Just location and code. And who am I delivering it to? His smile deepens. You already have. Your hand goes instinctively to your satchel. The scroll is gone. You don't remember anyone taking it. You don't know when it left you. You look at the man. What is this? A test. A mirror. A delivery without end. You stare. Is this espionage? He shrugs. Isn't everything? You leave the tent with more questions than when you entered. Outside, the wind has picked up. The stars above are clearer now, unfiltered by city smoke or palace light. You can see further than usual. But not far enough. Mint Sauce waits by the post. He nibbles a thorn bush like it owes him money. You rest against the wall, watching soldiers clean their gear and whisper stories to each other in the low lantern light. You realize that here, even truth wears armor. You've delivered the scroll. But not the message. You're not sure you ever will. And yet, when morning comes, you know exactly what you'll do. You'll ride. Because someone has to. You leave the Jade Gate just after dawn. There's no assignment waiting. No new scroll. No urgent stamp or whispered directive. But you ride anyway. Because what else would you do? Stand still? The wind is colder on the way back. It carries with it the taste of things unsaid, of stories too light for record books and too heavy for poems. You and Mint Sauce travel in silence. The good kind. The kind that wraps around you like an old cloak. The road feels different in reverse. Familiar, but off by a hair. The mile markers are more tilted. The trees a bit less green. Even the birds seem to sing in a different dialect. At the second station, a boy greets you with wide eyes and trembling hands. First week on duty. He gives you water and forgets to ask your name. You don't mind. You weren't planning to give your real one anyway. There's a letter tacked to the scribe wall. It's unsigned. Just a note. The scroll arrived. The riot didn't happen. Thank you. You read it twice. It doesn't say who it's for. But somehow, it's for you. You continue writing. At the next post, you overhear a courier complaining about saddle rash and misspelled addresses. You nod in solidarity, offer him a leftover radish cake, and exchange a knowing glance. You don't have to say anything. The life says it for you. By the time you reach East Wind Haven again, the sky is bruised with sunset. The girl who once wrote poetry in sand is now copying documents in ink. Her handwriting has improved. She smiles when she sees you. I didn't think you'd come back. You shrug. Didn't think I'd leave. She pauses, then says, we talk about you. You blink. What do you mean? The writers. The scribes. The ones out on the edge. We say, if he made it, maybe we will too. You don't know what to say to that. So you just sit. She pours you tea. The next day, you receive a scroll. Not from the office. Not from a station. From someone. The outside is plain. Inside, a single sentence. You're not the message. But you're the reason it moves. You fold it slowly. Carefully. Tuck it into your satchel beside the spare thread, the wrapped dates, the slip of cloth from the widow's house. You write again. One more town. One more field. One more family who sees your badge and decides maybe, just maybe, they're still part of the empire. You stop briefly in a village with no name. Help a man load firewood. Listen to a child read their first sentence. Sit beside a woman as she burns an unread letter from a son who never made it home. You don't ask questions. You don't give advice. You just stay. For one evening. And then you go. You pass a stone by the side of the road. Carved into it are the names of 3 riders who vanished on this route in the last decade. You stop. Place a pebble beside it. Then ride on. By the time you see Chang'an again, its lights like stars that forgot they belonged to the sky, you realize something. You were never just delivering news. You were delivering connection. Threading people together through rain and riot, through loss and rumor, through poems, orders, lies, and truths no one dared admit aloud. And though no one will remember your name in the official records, you've written yourself into the breath of the empire. You arrive back at the main post station and dismount. Mint Sauce snorts once. As if to say, well, what now? You smile. You don't know. But you'll be ready. When the next scroll comes, tied in string or silk or sorrow, you'll write again. So here we are, friend. The satchel's empty. The horse is resting. And your boots, mud-caked, torn, but somehow still intact, are finally off your feet. The road has unspooled behind you like a thread that's stitched together more than just distance. It's stitched lives, voices, moments. As you lie back and let the memory of wind and hoofbeats fade, let your breathing slow. Let your shoulders ease. Let the weight of scrolls be replaced by the softness of stillness. Think of all those small hands that passed you water. All those silent nods from strangers who saw your badge and understood. All those hidden messages, some of which you'll never know the meaning of, but somehow carried anyway, with care. The empire is vast, but not infinite. The work is hard, but not thankless. And you? You were part of something that mattered. Not in titles or fame or coin, but in the quiet comfort of knowing that the world turned just a little more smoothly, because you kept going. So close your eyes. The messages will wait. For tonight, you rest. The story ends, not with a proclamation, but with the soft sound of reins being loosened, boots set aside, and a horse chewing quietly in the dark. Sleep well, courier. You've done enough.